Carolina. Incidentally, we did contact all the political parties in Northern Ireland. We offered them all an opportunity to put one of their representatives on the programme to respond to this landmark ruling today from the Supreme Court. Only one party took up our offer, that is the TUV, and their MLA, Timothy Gaston, is on the line. Welcome, Timothy.
Afternoon, William.
Good to have you with us. Give us your response to what you've been hearing today.
Well, very much this has delivered a dose of reality, and it's a landmark day for women's rights. I'm very pleased, and I pay tribute for Women's Scotland for taking this forward and challenging the narrative that has been put out there. My goodness, if ever there was a dose of reality needed, this UK Supreme Court has delivered that. It was quite clear the legal definition is based on biological sex, and somebody cannot change their sex. And this has been, and I do believe the UK government has said this has brought clarity, and I do support that statement. And the clarity now needs to be that Stormont takes note of what has been ruled today and sits up and changes some of their practices, and indeed relooks at a lot of policies that they have been peddling over the last number of years. So I think it's a good day. It's a good day for women's rights, and it's one where women can feel more confident now moving forward, that they can stick up for themselves, and they'll no longer be looked upon or downtrodden for raising these concerns that they have.
What are the policies or practices at Stormont, Timothy, that you think on the back of this judgment could now be looked at or potentially changed?
Well, what you have to look at, so the flagship policy that the Executive Office has been running with is violence against women and girls. I sit in the TEO committee, and I've raised on numerous occasions, asking both ministers and indeed when officials come forward what a woman is. To this day, nobody has been able to define that. They've been too scared to step forward and say that a woman is an adult female and her sex is determined at birth. So very much you have the flagship policy they need to have a look at and use the term woman going forward, confident in the definition. As well as that, we have the gender language that has been pushed through the finance department, which has taken out terms like woman, taken out terms like man. No more should that be acceptable, that woke nonsense being peddled throughout the department. And indeed, when we look at the Department of Justice, women's only spaces and women's only prisons should mean exactly that. So I believe today, as much as it's been downplayed, paragraph 265 of the judgment spells out very important points. It says the Gender Recognition Act did not change the meaning of the terms man and woman in the 1975 Sex Discrimination Act. The Sex Discrimination Act refers to biological sex. The Equality Act of 2010 did not modify the meaning of man and woman, and there are aspects of life which require a biological interpretation of sex, including changing rooms and medical services. So this is a lot more wide-ranging than I believe the expert at the top of the programme made out. And indeed, when we look at what the government has said, and they've said we have always supported protection of single-sex spaces based on biological sex.
Well, hang on a minute. The expert at the top of the show is a professor of constitutional law at Queen's University. So this is an 88-page judgment. I have it in front of me, right? You read out a couple of sentences. What is the interpretation? What is the interpretation you've heard from our legal expert you want to challenge?
Well, if you let me go on, so what the UK government has said, this ruling brings clarity and confidence for women and service providers.
Sure, but that's not the language of the judgment. That's a political statement by the government. What are you challenging about Aoife O'Donoghue's interpretation of this judgment?
And I've said single-sex spaces are protected in the law and will always be protected by this government. So it is a lot more wide-ranging than what Aoife has laid out at the start. She has tried to narrow what it is, but there's obviously ramifications. The UK government is sitting up and saying that, this is protected in law. So my goodness, yes, it's a lot more wide-ranging than has been made out in the programme today. And there's an onus on Stormont, there's an onus on the executive now to come out and give their comments on what has been said in the judgment today.